Such a beautiful message. Note that al-Bukhari included the hadith about the revocation of trust in a separate chapter entitled Idst Bak Hutsala Min and Nas, if one is among morally decayed people. With a title like this, it is as if al-Bukhari wanted to imply that the revocation of trust leads to the corruption of the times, to the extent that they call it al-Hutsala, a word used to denote a group of people who have fallen into disgrace and lowliness. The original meaning of this word is taken from the husk of wheat or dates that is thrown away when clean. The connection between Hutsala and the hadith is very clear, because the existence of Hutsala is due to the removal of the trust from people's hearts, where Islam is only a name that has no value and no substance left. What could be more damaging than people who glorify a person, when there is not even a shred of faith in that person? Al-Bukhari created this chapter based on the narration from Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "How would it be, O Abdullah bin Amr, if you were in the midst of people whose morals are corrupt? They have broken their promises and reneged on their trusts, and they have disputed with people until they have become like this." Then the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, linked his fingers together. Abdullah asked the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, "What would you order me to do if that were to happen to me?" He replied, "You should only associate with those who come from among you, and leave associating with the Awam." Hr. Ath-Tabari, and authenticated by Lunu Hibban. This hadith suggests that there is a contradiction between the promise given and the trustworthiness that must be fulfilled. This contradiction is actually intended to ridicule those who are not trustworthy, which in the previous hadith is likened to the revocation of trustworthiness. In addition, the hadith also has the perspective of fiqh related to someone who experiences or lives in such times. Namely, that he should only associate with friends who have a trustworthy attitude, if he is able to find such a group. So this is fiqh related to the attitude that must be taken when someone finds a condition where humans have been corrupted. 17. Handing over matters to non-experts. Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "What is the description of wasting a trust?" He replied, "If a matter is given to someone who is not an expert in it." He replied, "If a matter is entrusted to someone who is not an expert, then wait for the hour to come." Hr. Al-Bukhari, Ar-Rakak. Another narration by Al-Bukhari reads, "If a matter is handed over to non-experts, then wait for the time, the day of judgment, to arrive." Explanation of the hadith. As is customary, a pillow is used as a backrest for the one who uses it, and the position of the pillow should match the position of the backrest. This is also the case with the religion of Islam. It has a pillow, which is the people who perpetuate its Sharia. Allah, the Almighty, says, "Verily, the noblest among you in the sight of Allah is the most pious among you. Verily, Allah knows best." Al-Hujurat 1. And he said again, "For indeed, the best person you can take for a worker for us is one who is strong and trustworthy." Al-Kashash 26. This is why the most suitable person to carry the message, whether it is related to religion, the caliphate, government affairs, or other matters, is always the one who is the most pious, the most wara, and the most just among them. On the other hand, these people were the most prepared to carry the message, the most knowledgeable about the affairs of this world and the hereafter, the most zuhid, and the most free from the snares of the world. They were the first generation to lead the Muslims, so that when they came to power, the attitude of trustworthiness was reflected in all fields. And they felt comfortable with the cushion of leadership on which they rested, where they fulfilled it according to the proper rules. On the other hand, if those who carry out this mandate are leaders and officials who have the opposite traits of those we have mentioned earlier, then that is when a very big disaster occurs. Many standards of values are shifted. Mandates are squandered. Religious teachings are put aside, not to mention the destruction that is so close. That is when the day of judgment will occur. In order to explain this omen, we present some hadiths that explicitly describe this omen in the form of the prioritization of traitors and wicked people and pragmatists for certain positions over people who are just and trustworthy and devoted to worship. Anas bin Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, said, "The Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, O Messenger of Allah, when will we be able to refrain from exhorting one another to do what is good and forbid what is evil?" He replied, "When there arises among you a thing which arose at the time of the children of Israel, that is, moral corruption is practiced by the old, government is held by the young, and knowledge is in the hands of the lowly. Hr. Lunyu Maya, Al-Fitan, Hadith No. 4015. Explanation: as is well known, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil is the main propagation of the Muslim Ummah. It is also a symbol of the superiority of this Ummah over other nations. Its glory will not be achieved except by performing this duty. But under the grip of shifting values and changing Muslim yardsticks, especially in this most important element of the Muslim Ummah's identity, and at the same time as all values have been loosened and human morals have deteriorated, sometimes it is no longer worthwhile to do amar ma'ruf nahi munkar. In other words, those who strive to uphold this commandment are often tempted by feelings of hopelessness and futility. Since then, people have stopped practicing this commandment. As we know, the goodness of a people depends on two groups, the umara and the ulama. Firstly, if power is held by those who are still young, well, we already know that the dominant disposition of young people is to be careless, hasty, and easily indulge in their lusts, then the fabric of society will become very fragile. However, if what is meant by shigirhum is people with low mentality and wickedness, a greater disaster will occur. Based on various hadith sources, this meaning lowly and wicked people is the stronger one. Secondly, the wicked who play with religious knowledge. If knowledge is held by the ungodly, one can imagine that they will play with the knowledge they have with various misleading interpretations of the Quran and as Sunnah. They also use these two sources to fulfill the whims of their lusts. Thirdly, old people whose morals are corrupt. If Pharisaya is defined as adultery, which is the cause of all corruption, then these are the people whom Allah, may He be glorified and exalted, will not care about on the day of judgment. This is because they have done what Allah, may He be glorified and exalted, has forbidden, even though their lust was not as great when they were young. However, if we are talking about those who are in charge of the affairs of the Ummah, as well as the scholars and the Umara, then enjoining the good and forbidding the evil against them is futile. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, confirmed that if these three things happen, then it is better to abandon commanding the good and forbidding the evil. What is happening at the present time is more corroborative of the hadith than a lengthy explanation of it. Actual circumstances are more telling than elaborate words. Likewise, the hadith instructions that explain the denial of trust and the handing over of an affair to someone who is not an expert have clearly shown signs in this era, so that in the end, the effort to enjoin the good nahi munkar finds a dead end. Anas ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, reported, the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, before the appearance of the Dajjal there will be years of great deception. In them, the truthful will be denied, and the liars will be vindicated, and the trustworthy will be considered treacherous, and the treacherous will be trusted. At that time, the Ruwaybida will speak out. So he was asked, who are the Ruwaybida? He replied, they are the wicked who speak about the affairs of the Ummah. Al-Adawi, Ash-Shahi al-Musnad 7284. This hadith gives a very clear indication of the phenomenon of handing over affairs to people who are not experts. This is illustrated by the presence of people with low morale who discuss the affairs of the Ummah. So, what can you do? What other betrayal of trust is worse than this phenomenon? In the Hadith, it is reported that the appearance of the Ruwaybida, lowly wicked people, is associated with the beginning of the appearance of the Dajjal on earth. Because the actions of these lowly, wicked people are one part of the preconditions that facilitate the Dajjal's hegemony on earth. And it is this concern about their actions over the fate of Muslims that underlies why the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was more concerned than the Dajjal himself. Abu Dar al-Ghafari radiyallahu anhu reported, I heard the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, say, there is something I fear more for my Ummah than the Dajjal. And when I feared that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, had entered his house, I immediately asked him a question. O Messenger of Allah, who do you fear more than the Dajjal? He replied, they are the leaders. He replied, they are the leaders who mislead. Ahmad, Musnad al-Anshar, Hadith No. 21354. This hadith has a shahid narrated by Als ibn Sadid, as stated by al-Haythami, that its sanad is sahih, which was also narrated by al-Bazar, Mima as Zawaid 7 221. 18. Adjacent markets. Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, the hour will not come until there are many many lies, close markets, shortening of time, and many al-harj. So he was asked, O Messenger of Allah, what is al-harj? He replied, murder. As-Silsila al-Hadith ash-Shaheen, Jil. 1, Hadith No. 2772. It should be noted that the existence of adjacent markets is not clear except in the present time, which is characterized by many crowded centers and easy travel between cities. In addition, various facilities can also be accessed quickly. In the past, the distance between one market and another was so far apart that people had to take a tiring journey to get there. But nowadays, every city is arguably full of huge shopping centers. Even the recent phenomenon of what is called trading via the internet or e-commerce has made the market very, very close. What is clear is that we have all proven for ourselves what the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said in the Hadith. In addition, we are also part of the people who live in the era as reported by the Prophet. 19. The spread of lies. This sign of the Day of Judgment is stated in the Hadith. In the discussion of the previous sign, the phenomenon of the spread or abundance of lies is more due to worldly factors and various material interests in the midst of the fading of religious values in people's minds and real lives. This sign is something that has been predicted, even being a logical consequence of the influence of the various signs of the Day of Judgment that we have mentioned, such as the revocation of trust, the spread of ignorance with the revocation of knowledge, and so on. This sign is one of the signs that have been detected at this time. It is as if lies are an easily available snack. In addition, people today have experienced a decline in prudence. This can be proven by the number of lies, whether they appear in the form of words, jokes, or exaggerating things. What needs attention is that this phenomenon of spreading lies also appears in the middle of markets that are close to each other, like a pot that finds its lid. This phenomenon is very visible in buying and selling activities. It is certain that if the market players are not believers, lies are one of the media used in their marketing activities. What is happening does prove this. Nowadays, it is difficult to find an honest and trustworthy trader. On the contrary, lies have become diplomacy and at the same time a market strategy to get customers. 20. Greeting only certain people. Ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu reported that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, Among the signs of the hour is that a man will not greet anyone except those whom he knows. Al-Adawi, Ash-Shahi al-Musnad p. 404. Ibn Masud, may Allah be pleased with him, reported that the Messenger of Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Among the signs of the day of resurrection is the greeting of peace only to certain people." Ahmad, Musnad al-Mukatsiran, Hadith No. 3896. In order to fully understand the meaning of this omen, it is necessary to explain what is the nature of Muslim relationships, or the nature of the Prophet's peace and blessings of Allah be upon him instructions regarding the bonds between Muslims. And the characteristics of the harbingers of the last days are basically those that contradict these instructions. And the following are 3 points among them. Firstly, the Prophet's instructions regarding the emotional ties that are linked through spreading greetings to fellow Muslims. As is well known, a Muslim is like a family to another Muslim. In fact, it has been described that they are like a body in which if one member of the body is in pain, the others are in pain too. This relationship is linked to the bond of religious brotherhood, which is more valuable in the view of Sharia than blood ties. This is the kind of relationship that the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, emphasized so much. One of the strongest supports of this relationship was the use of the greeting of peace as a Muslim greeting, regardless of whether it was to a known person or someone else. In fact, the only way to know for sure whether a person passing by you is a Muslim, on which the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, based it, is whether he says the greeting of peace or not. His greeting is sufficient for you to greet him back immediately, because he is one of you and one of the bearers of the message. Therefore, the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, considered spreading the greeting of peace to be one of the greatest signs of Islam, as well as one of the easiest ways to reach paradise. The Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, "You will not enter paradise until you truly believe. And you will not truly believe until you love one another. Would you like me to show you something that if you do it, you will love one another?" Spread the greeting of peace. Muslim, Al-Iman, Hadith No. 54. In fact, this message was also reinforced by the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him. In a hadith narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, a man asked Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, "What is the best deed in Islam?" He replied, "Feeding and greeting people, whether you know them or not." Our Al-Bukhari, Al-Lemon, Hadith No. 12. Secondly, greeting only certain people is a disease that has plagued Muslims since the last days of the early generations of Muslims. If you notice, the divisions among Muslims have been happening since the time of Caliph Uthman radiyallahu anhu. Then over time, the values of the teachings that are very important and serve to strengthen the brotherhood of Muslims began to fade. One of the symptoms that emerged at that time was greeting only to people who were known or for certain circles, or answering the greeting is only for certain groups of Muslims. As for other than them, there is no fraternal relationship at all, even if it is just answering the greeting. Whereas spreading the greeting of peace is a very important matter in order to establish personal relationships among Muslims. Some of the companions felt this unfavorable symptom at the end of their lives. As an example, we will mention an athar from Aswad bin Yazid, who said, "Once the iqamat for prayer was announced in the mosque. We were walking with Abdullah bin Masud towards the mosque. When the people bowed, Abdullah bowed too, and we bowed with him while arranging the rows. A man passed in front of him and said, 'As-salamu alayka, O Abu Abdurrahman.' Abdullah, still bowing, said, 'It is true what the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said.' Then, some people asked him about this after he had finished his prayer, Why did you say, "It is true what the messenger of Allah peace and blessings of Allah be upon him said"?